welcome to Juice Podcast. I'm Emily Harmon.
Oh, and I'm Gwen Douglas. Welcome to today's episode on the Loire.
So I'm quite excited about this.
I am too.
I'm kind of surprised we haven't done the Loire actually, because we
Me
both,
too.
particularly you, I feel like you do
got
quite a lot
lots
of,
Yeah, I do actually.
you know, René Mars, like you like
Yeah, I love
Chanel.
Chanel a lot.
Yeah.
It's definitely a go-to for me.
And your Savvy Bee, Love Affair,
Dude.
Aromatics.
Also our friend Frankie.
Yes. Oh yes. Oh yes.
It's the perfect region. Also, I love that we're doing it as a springtime thing, because I kind of feel like there's so many great, like, fresh, delicious, zingy springtime
Yeah, totally.
choices in the Loire.
Yes. Yes.
So we have 4 today. So we're gonna try not to
Be wasted.
Yeah.
We'll try to keep our stuff together.
Right.
So
we're going to start with a little bit of like where the Loire is for those that.
yes, yeah. So we know where the Loire is. So we're in northwest France. Brittany's not far by. So basically, I would say the closest town anyway is Tours
That sounds about right.
Nantes. No, Tours to Nantes. I think
Sounds-
is the two ends. So yeah, Nantes being right near the sea, where all of the wines like Muscadet come from with Melon de Bourgogne. We don't have one today.
We can do that another
Do
day.
that another time. So we start with the kind of the lower vineyards into the middle, central, and then the upper Loire. So all of the vineyards follow the Loire. All of the vineyards follow the Loire River inland.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. And I'm sure, obviously, the river plays a part in.
Moderating the climate,
Right.
of course, as well, because it's a very cold place,
Right.
or cool climate to produce wine, and the soils vary depending where you are in the Loire as well.
So we have
there's-
some limestone.
Yeah, there's a lot of limestone. Like particularly in the middle part where you see a lot of Chenin Blanc, for example,
Right.
it's very famous for these tuffeau soils. And then obviously when you go further inland towards where we find more of the Sauvignon planted and the Pinot Noir, there's different soils there, rockier soils,
Okay.
flint,
Okay.
silex showing up. Obviously,
Yeah, so there was
few-
some like marine lands, kind of like
yes,
Chablis has. that
yeah,
sort
these
of, like,
fossilised. Yeah, and most chalk anyways. I mean, I think all
Fossilised,
chalk
yes.
is fossilised.
Yes, I think so.
Is fossilised. It's like made from animals essentially.
What? Yeah.
Whether that's algae
Yes,
or
exactly.
fish or mammals,
Right.
it's all made from decomposed.
Like the White Cliffs of Dover.
Yes, and the vineyards of Champagne
Yes, exactly.
under the layer of trash.
Under the layer of garbage.
Under a sweet layer of garbage, yes. But yeah, maybe while we get into this, I might start by pouring the first wine for us, so we're not.
So Em's
Yeah.
picked our lineup today to give us a nice like overview of some interesting producers, that we can look at some different grapes and see some iconic producers.
Yeah, I think for some people in the know, they'll know maybe at least one of the producers. Maybe people know all of the producers, but they're all quite small producers.
Yeah, which is cool.
And some of them have like sort of
Cult status.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So here we go.
It's alright, Rudy, relax. The dog is again under the table, so be aware.
He is our
Barking might occur.
he's our podcast set manager, the agent under the table.
The agent.
Sounds like a scene from The Matrix. There's an agent under the
Yeah.
table.
I'm actually really happy you brought a fizz, actually.
Mm.
Because I think you're totally right that this is a region that makes a lot of really nice sparkling,
Well, this is the
and
amazing
affordable stuff.
Yeah, and this is the amazing thing about the Loire for me is that there is so much diversity in terms of grape variety, soils, regions, stories,
Whilst
producers, wine styles. Exactly, you have sparkling, dry, richer wines, sweet wines.
it's a one-stop shop.
It is, yeah. Maybe not for full-bodied wines so much, but yeah, definitely for fresh wines, young wines, and also wines that age very well as well. We don't have anything old today. That's
No.
maybe for
We
another
will do
time.
like a Loire 2.0,
Yes.
aged Loire.
Lockdown 5 will do that.
Yeah. So we've both, I've had this before because of you.
Yeah, I gave you a bottle, right?
Yeah, it's delicious. It has a really nice scent,
Mm.
actually.
So the one that we're starting off with is the 2018 Pet Sec Rosé from Les Capriades. And yeah, I really love this producer, and I think they've sort of been growing in popularity over the years as well. I imported a number of bottles of this into Germany at the beginning. Not the beginning of last year. At some time in 2019.
What is time?
Yeah, I know. I mean, I know I've been thinking about that Ravelli book so much lately.
So I should read it again. Actually.
I'm like, now's
time
the
for that.
time.
Yes.
Yeah, just like what
What
is
is
time?
time? I love
But
it.
yeah. So anyway, so these. What's quite interesting here, 2 winemakers, Pascal and Moses, and they are making the wine together. They're a small operation, 6.5 hectares. They make 35,000 bottles, so very small production. And they only make Method Ancestral, so they only make Pet Nat. So this is really what they focus their energies on. And they do it excellently, and I think they've really got it down pat. There's always the right level of fizz, the right level of dryness.
The bubbles are nice and
clean.
fine. It's like not too.
Yeah, and these are natural wines. There's like no mousiness at all. And I know in previous years, I remember when I did my pop-up in Superbrick in the motorcycle garage in 2016, I had magnums of these. And a few years before that, there was some of the Pet Nats that had a touch of mousiness to them, but that's not the case, and it hasn't been the case for many years. There is this pristine, crystalline quality in the wines. There's this finesse in the bubbles.
The smell is really phenomenal. They have a really like delicate, fine. There is a little perfumey,
Yes.
floral.
For me, do you know what this always smells like initially? Jolly Ranchers.
Oh yeah, totally. I can see that.
Like the green and
Yeah,
the cherry,
totally.
like the green apple flavour and the cherry
Yes.
one.
Oh, I 100% can see that. Yes.
Mm.
Totally.
So this is actually a blend of
Cough. Excuse me.
So
Actually,
actually,
I
this is-
Tickle my throat.
I'm joking. So this is actually a blend of Copt, which is the local word for Malbec,
Ah,
which you
okay.
find in
Yes.
Loire, but it's called Copt, C-O-T. Copt, it's Gamay and Cabernet Franc. So the
lovely.
3 of the main red grapes in the Loire in this Pet Nat. But yeah.
Yeah, really. I think. What's the price point for this? Like, if you buy it from a shop.
If it was in a shop, it would be depending on the shop's margin, because they are a little bit more expensive than other Pet Nats, but it's because it's an artisan product.
Right, delicious.
And they're working organically in quite a wet area as well. So the retail price would probably be somewhere between, in euros, 22 to 25.
I mean, that's, I
In a
think,
shop.
reasonable for something like this.
And on a wine list, somewhere between 40 and 50, depending on the margin.
But I
So
think
it's not like out of the realm of any other Pet Nat.
no, and I think like for what it is, it's really pretty. Anyone would be happy if you had this
Yes.
like celebratory, fun.
Yeah.
I would drink this at brunch. I would
Yes.
drink this in the middle of the night.
When I can't sleep.
Kind of wear it like perfume.
When those bad dreams
Yeah.
come.
No, I think it's like a
Yeah.
sparkling for all occasions.
Yes. Yeah, I love this. I love that it's got this dry, like it's dry but it's fruity.
Yeah, there's like, is there
Fresh,
a
but
little
it's-
residual sugar? Because it does have, it feels like there's a little.
It does, and I think it feels like there's more than there is.
Yeah,
but,
probably.
but I think there is
That's
like
the
maybe a
flavour.
gram or 2, but I don't think it's more than that.
Yeah, very nice.
But yeah, I like that there's this kind of little bit of yeasty toastiness
Yeah, a
in the
little bit at
back
the
as
end.
well.
But otherwise, this seems to be like when I was reading about sparklings in the Loire, there is this sort of delicacy with some of the. But I haven't had because there's no Chardonnay in this, right? It's 3 red grapes.
Yes.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
The last time I had it,
Yes.
so I should not be drinking blindly. Ah! Yeah, cool.
But I think, I mean, this is interesting, and I think actually just with Pet Nats as well, like, I mean, obviously they've been made all over, but I mean, the Loire, there's so many Pet Nats
Right.
to choose from. There's certain regions where, you know, that it's just a bit more common to see this style of wine, and I think it's also because the Loire, even though you have sort of larger producers, more commercial producers, it's also an area with
Right.
a high amount of organic vineyards. The
Yeah,
natural wine scene, what was happening in Beaujolais was also happening in the Loire at the same time, and it was kind of a really revolutionary area, particularly because it's one of the more challenging climates in France to
Right.
produce
I
wines
guess when
this
it's
way,
so
or
wet,
farm
you
wines
have a
this
lot
way.
of like vineyard
Mold.
issues, molds and bacterial
exactly.
problems and.
So to not use fungicides, for example,
Right.
you know,
Is
it'd
it
be very
huge?
tempting to use them.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because this is also an area that like there's botrytis in some wines, right? Because of this.
Some of the sweet
Yeah,
wines,
some
yeah.
of the sweet wines.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
very cool.
obviously you have to really be in the vineyards if you're making wines that way.
And I also think it's important that people know that, because I think if you do see that some things cost a little more, but when you see that they're organic certified or they're doing things biodynamically, it tells you already that you have to have some understanding that they go through a little harder time
Yes.
than someone in the south of France with a 300 days of sun. That when you're battling a maritime climate and a lot of wet, that things are coming at you
Yes, totally.
that take time and money.
And I think while we're talking about the grapes, like it could be good just to summarise the other grapes that we find. So for white grapes, I mentioned just before Melon de Bourgogne, which is the grape variety that's used in Muscadet.
Which I think it's very confusing for people, the name
Yes.
Muscadet. So there's this push towards calling it more Melon Blanc seems to be the push these days, because the Bourgogne part, apparently they're trying to distance themselves
from
Burgundy.
Bourgogne, yeah.
So they're trying to like not confuse people.
Yes.
But it has many names, right? This grape? Or a few?
Maybe.
I think it has.
I've always called it that, but I mean...
No, Melon
maybe
de
I've-
Bourgogne, then there's Melon Blanc, then it's also called, we just said it, Muscadet?
Yeah, but Muscadet is usually the appellation.
Right, so then it gets like
Confused.
confusing,
Yeah,
because, right.
yeah. So you've got... Yeah, Muscadet is always Melon de Bourgogne, but you can also have Melon de Bourgogne outside of Muscadet.
Right.
I know, I was trying to explain why that was to somebody, and I was like, it's not that
I guess because it's like before any sort of like globalness, each region just named shit whatever they wanted.
Yes.
And then it's like only caused a problem when we all started to be like, yeah, but we called it this.
And
You know?
yeah.
Like, but
Yeah,
our
yeah,
grape is the same name.
Yeah.
So anyway,
So we've got that, we've got Chenin,
Chenin,
Sauvignon Blanc.
right?
The other white grape that pops up a bit is Romorantin.
Oh.
Romorantin, which is in the appellation of Cour Chevenix, you see that?
Yes.
Different to Chevenix, because Chevenix is a Sauvignon, either Sauvignon Chenin or Sauvignon Chardonnay blend. But yeah, Cour Chevenix is always 100% Romorantin.
I don't even know this.
We see a bit of Chardonnay, as I just mentioned.
Yes.
And then for reds, I mean, there's really quite a lot of red grapes there for a cool climate. So
Cabernet
Cabernet Franc, Malbec, as we just said, Cotte, Gamay, and Pinot Noir.
And they have so many paint colors.
Grollo,
Grollo, yeah.
and I think there's a couple of other little ones
I feel like
that
I feel like I made a list, or I looked at.
There's another red.
There's also Aligoté in some.
Yes. We'll just cut that bit out.
Cut that bit.
I know, we have, the clapper.
Sorry.
Chalks in the office. Cut that. So there's quite a few different grape varieties in the Loire. White, there's Melon de Bourgogne that we've been talking about, which
Many
is
names.
many names. And then there is Chenin Blanc,
Right.
Sauvignon, Chardonnay, a little bit of Romorantin, found in Cour Chevenix. And then the red grapes, we have
Frankie boy.
Cabernet Franc, we have Pinot Noir, Gamay, Cotte, which is Malbec, and then Pinot de Nice and Grollo. And there might be some other things that we've
I'm
missed
sure
off,
there's
but
some
they
bits
are
and bobs here and there.
they're the key players that say.
There's a lot going on. I mean,
Mm.
it must be actually then. I mean, each region obviously for appellations will have rules. But then if you're making Vin de France or you're doing some biodynamic stuff, it puts a lot of tools in your tool belt to make interesting stuff if you don't want to have appellations. Are there a lot of winemakers working off?
Yeah, I mean, there's some iconic ones. Like, I mean, look at Thierry Pouzelat, for example. I mean, some of his wines he doesn't
Use any of the...
Some he does use some of the appellations, some he doesn't. And I think, there's way more freedom around operating outside the appellation system. And I mean, now is a better time than ever to be doing that, because you don't have to rely on the brand. If you've got the right connections and you get the right importers and you go directly to the trade.
And already if you have a name
this-
for yourself as a good winemaker, people don't care then if it's like not a Sancerre or whatever.
I mean, we're talking about small, like in this lineup here anyway, we're talking about quite small producers.
Right.
So there's a limit anyway to how much they can
Yes,
sell or need to sell,
Okay.
you know?
But this has been a great start, I
Yes.
think. I think it shows that there's like a nice place to look for sparkling if you don't want to be spending champagne money and want something a little different. You know, not everyone likes the flavors in champagne anyway, because sometimes they can be quite savory or buttery or rich or bready or whatever.
Yes.
And sometimes people want something a little more floral or with a little more fruit, something a bit more delicate. So I think there's some of those options maybe in the Loire.
I agree. And I think for me as well, what I find interesting is not just one is there's diversity in the wine styles, of course. There's a breadth of different wines that you can choose.
Right.
You know, like I just said the same thing in a different sentence. But I think it's often still a region where you can get good values.
Yeah, right.
So like even the expensive wines are like not even expensive compared to other regions. You know, and it's quite interesting. I had a conversation with a sommelier friend in November because I wanted to purchase an expensive bottle of Sauvignon. It was a bottle of Didier Dagenau, Silex.
Okay,
And I wanted to buy this wine because I was like, oh, I love this wine. And he said to me, but it's Sauvignon, why would you spend that much money on a bottle of Sauvignon? And then I was like, but it's like, I mean, it's like the price of a Premier Cru Burgundy, it's not.
And who cares if you like it?
But then I was like, I understand, but then I was like, why have we got these things, you know, like
These like weird ideas of like, oh.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like every other system where you're like passed on these set of ideals and, oh, we see value in this and we see value in this, and there's not value in that. And I don't know, it taught me out of buying it, and then like the whole, like for days after I was like really ruminating on it, so I was just like, why did I let somebody talk me out of this?
Out of something that you find delicious, that you enjoy drinking.
Living in a patriarchal world influences you even with your wine buying.
I mean, it's the same idea like when we talk about, when people use the term like basic bitch to describe something. I really hate this term because it's like, it means nothing. Like, there are some wines that are popular because they appeal to lots of people's palates and we all like it. There's nothing wrong about it. There's nothing basic about something being universally delicious or universally great. And if you like it, then fucking roll with it. If you don't, then get off and move on to something else. It's like taking away someone's pleasure for something, it's just shit all around. Like,
I mean, this is also, it goes into a slightly different topic as well of like, this is where I think wine overlaps with art as well, with the idea that value is found in your personal view and value of something actually.
yes, it
But
should
of
be.
course there's a level of value to some degree of like quality and
Right.
you know, like maybe you're not getting value for money in something or whatever, but when wines get after a certain price point, that's when it does become like buying fine art. Like, okay,
Sure. I
is
mean,
that
because they're
is that
investment
like
pieces.
piece of cardboard that's like just glued onto a piece of canvas?
But I think it's
You know,
also
like-
then the motivation of why someone is buying it, because you know there are some art buyers that buy unusual pieces of art because it speaks to them, because they enjoy it.
And that's exactly what I mean with the wine.
Yeah, some people are buying wine because they love it and enjoy it, and other people are buying it as like speculatory, like an investment. Like, oh, if I buy this, I don't understand it or like it, but I think this artist is going to be really famous in X number of years and I could sell it for a lot of money. And people do this with wine all the time. So it's like, yeah, the motivation behind why someone even purchased something is also important. Are you buying it because you just love it? Then fucking buy it. If it's worth, if you have the money and it's, you know, you can obviously wait around until it gets a little cheaper, and it's nice to ask people if it's, you know, if it's going to go down in price. The same as in art, but I think if you're buying something that you enjoy, only you can make the decision if it's worth it.
100%. And I mean, it's interesting this as well with wine, like just staying on this sort of art topic as well, especially with the secondary
So I was
market.
about to say the secondary market is like,
Yeah, I mean, look
unreal.
at like what's happening with producers like Miroir, for example. I mean, it's kind of disgusting. Like
I mean,
€1,000
and
for a
it's
wine.
out of control, because we bought a bottle of Miroir in Amsterdam for like from a restaurant for like $65.
Yes.
You know, a few years ago. Like even on the list, it was like listed for 65.
Mm.
So it's like astounding to me to see, because you know the winemaker's not seeing that secondary market money, and like never does.
And I've seen this. I've actually seen winemakers starting to bypass the secondary market because they're getting sick of it. So there's a Spanish producer that I know quite well, that friends of mine, and their top wine, they literally tripled the price of it because they were selling it.
Yeah, and then it was just
and then it was being sold for that price by other people.
Yes.
So they were like, do you know what?
and we sell it.
Yeah, like it's not going to any restaurant, so we're just going to sell it at this price, and people can just pay for
Because
it
that's
directly
right.
to us.
Because otherwise, for me, it makes like, it's really unfair then that the middleman makes a lot of money, and the actual person that's producing and crafting this beautiful thing gets nothing, or very little. You know, oh, you should be happy that your wine is a cult wine. It's like, yeah, who gives a shit if I'm still selling the wine for $15 a bottle? Who gives a shit if it's being sold for $700 on the secondary
Yes.
market? I don't see it.
Yes.
It's not.
Yeah,
fair.
and I think that's also the that's also where it becomes, the view is skewed for the consumer, right? Because of it looks as though they're doing
Right.
really well, but it's actually not the case.
It's the same with art. When you see things like, you see, you know, up and coming artists sold at, you know, art sold at Christie's for
Totally.
like millions, and you're like, that artist was probably paid like 10 grand for that piece.
I mean, I don't know if you saw like with the scandal with like Dave Chappelle, the American comedian.
I mean-
I think he's from New York actually.
He's
and
admired in a lot of,
Huh?
like the comedian.
Yeah, do you know Dave Chappelle?
Yeah, of course.
It's so funny. And so recently, it was a couple of years ago, but fairly recently he was scheduled to do like some stand up. I think it was a 20-minute segment or something, and instead of doing the comedy, he was like, hey, so just letting you know, like, by the way, I'm an everyday person, and he talks about the complexities of like contracts and all of the intricacies that are written in there, and how you sign contracts as an artist because you're desperate, that you just take this and then
Because
you have no,
and
and
you have no power anymore.
so basically his show was being streamed on Comedy Central and I think HBO, and he was receiving no money for it, and
Totally.
he keep streaming it
I mean, this happens a
without
lot.
his consent.
This happens so much with like, you know, I had it with like Top Chef Canada forever. You know, like they message, and because a contestant had tattoos of mine, but they send you a contract that gives you a blanket where they can have control over your artwork in any form. Like that's the contract they make you want to sign. And I was like,
Yeah, and even
No.
apparently even in the contract it says like even in the universe, you know, like
Yeah, basically,
all
yeah.
these
in
ridiculous
case
things.
we move to Mars.
Yeah, no one will be able to buy it.
Yeah, it's kind of like, and I think as an artist or as a small wine producer, any of these things, you have to really be on top of this stuff because it's really easy.
But you can't. In some cases, you can't afford a lawyer. Like he didn't.
No, totally.
And now he's tied. So he did this whole like it
Happens
was
a
really
lot.
an active protest where he just said, "This is the only choice we have." He's like, if you support me, he's like, don't watch my show. Everybody needs to boycott the show. So the droppings,
Right.
the listing,
Right, to drop the
the
listing.
viewers, it drops. So then it
it's
actually
less
has an
value.
impact onto that channel.
Unfortunately.
And it was quite interesting. He talked. Then I saw another one because I was like, oh, I want to know more about this. And Netflix actually had been streaming it, and he wrote to them and said like, this is going
Right.
on, and they just removed it. And
I mean,
then
we
they,
need
and then
to
they
pick
paid
up-
him, and I
Yeah.
thought that was actually quite
and
like
then it bombed. But then,
no.
and then he made too many trans jokes, and he lost me as a viewer.
Dude,
But-
oh no.
But he has, this stuff is super interesting, the contract stuff, because this is how secondary market in so many things fucks everybody. And I think we touched on this on the last episode when you said about being mindful of where you put your money, and I think like, yes, this is a topic 100%. Don't buy your shit on the secondary market. Buy it from someone who's like, either has like direct contact with the, you know, you can go visit a lot of these places, I think, right? Like,
Yeah.
why
Yeah, I
just-
would say be really cautious. Also be really, I mean, for me as well, I don't buy anything on the secondary market because I'm not dealing so much in the fine wine end anyway, so I'm
You're
not
not
buying
buying
from
like-
auction and
yeah.
things so often. But if I did, there'd be ways to do it at least
Sure.
with a bit more consideration or through direct
Right.
sellers or whatever. But
Also, because it's just wasted money. That's the thing that makes me bananas. Because that money, it's just like someone making that money for like it's the really strange for me way to make money is someone who creates things for a living.
what do you mean? Sorry.
Like the person making all that money. I don't know. For me, it's like a really exploitive business. To
Yeah,
be
it's
in.
very exploitative. Totally.
Like the choice to be in this business and to, I mean, we live in a capitalist world, so that's part of the thing. But I would rather see that money. Imagine if so much of that secondary market money went back into wineries, where more wineries could go biodynamic or work a bit hard, you know, just better, easier.
Yes.
I mean,
or that winemaker could take his family on holiday.
right, take a break. You know, the winemakers work so hard. People forget that, like, when their wines are sold for hundreds and hundreds on the secondary market, they think they're fancy. These people are farmers, you know, like, who make beautiful things and who appreciate fine things, but not in the same
I think it's also to be cautious, just as a buyer anyway, is
of all
that
things.
one, there's that impact, and it's important to be aware of that impact. But two, you might actually be buying counterfeit wine.
Yeah, totally.
So
And also, I mean,
Very
the
easy.
environmental impact. You know, I remember seeing a bottle in the Hof, say at the tattoo shop, that someone had bought a couple of nice Premier Cru, whatever.
yeah,
But they were bought from a wine shop in America. They had a label on it, so it's like these wines went from the winery in France to obviously someone then in the States who then, you know, it's like, it just went back and forth and back and forth. It's like, we also don't need this ship to be traveling so far, back and forth. To go from Europe to the States, back to Europe. That's a journey. It
is a journey.
That it didn't need to
maybe it was a blend made by old mate, what's his name, Randy, who's the guy that did the, when he was making all the counterfeit wine in his apartment.
Yeah.
That was
amazing. Sour grapes.
Yeah. It was kind of amazing, wasn't it? I kind of was, in some ways...
Well, one time you want to high-five him for being so good
because
at
it's incredulous. It's just like, how's he getting away with this? But then you're also like, come on, man, check the lot numbers. Like, check, do your
But it actually
research.
shows you how much there's an element of trust in
Yeah,
this. And
also,
people don't challenge each other because there's a lot of ego tied into wines.
Well, and there's not enough education actually done around like sourcing wine and how to source wine.
It's easy to fleece people.
Yeah, and I mean I see this even at I see this in a very basic level, just even with how sommeliers purchase, wine shops purchase, online wine shops purchase, that there are ethics and values in place and systems in place that need to be respected for this to work in with respect to the winemaker, to everybody that does all of the work to promote, to build up the profile of those wineries. That I'm always really cautious around how I buy and who I buy from and in the way in which I buy from them. And I think that's not considered enough today because everybody looks for the quick fix and how can I get that wine for the cheapest price and and there's no thought of like, why
sustainability.
Is this? Yeah, totally. I mean,
for everybody.
Yes.
Right.
And it's like
it's not just what can you squeeze out of something, how can you squeeze as much out of something, but then if you do that, you kill it.
Yes.
Sometimes there has to be like...
Well, it all I'm a big believer of karma and I know it all comes around. It all comes out in the wash in some way because it's not a sustainable model. And I do think overall there are more people fighting the good fight.
Right. And it just gets more and more as this goes on.
But it's just being aware. So for anybody that is listening, that is looking to buy online, like if you're buying anything expensive that has a number or a lot number on the wine, contact the winery, check the lot number, because it could be a case that wine has been stolen. There's been a lot of wine crime happening within restaurants.
Yes, actually.
A lot of burglaries. There was one recently somewhere in Germany. And I mean,
these are some serious heists going down in the...
I mean, this is like, it's not jewelry thieves anymore, it's like fine wine thieves, so...
But it's the same idea where you have people with money, like, and weapons and like...
Yeah, it's like...
And they're
really
clever.
bad.
These are like art heists, basically.
So, exactly. Yeah. So it's really important to anything that you see. Also, you have to wonder sometimes, why do I have access to these things so easily? You know, like there's a reason why something might look like an appealing price. There's
it's too good to be true. It generally is.
Yes.
Yeah. Just to question a little bit, do a little research.
Yeah, question, always contact the winery. So you can always say, I'm purchasing this. This is the name of the seller. I want to check because the fine wine buyers will register the lot numbers. There's a traceability with that for
there'll be a sort of like
history.
Yeah, exactly. They'll be like, oh, this person makes sense because they're in contact with this person.
And if somebody's been like, say someone's hundreds of thousands of euros of wine stolen, let's say DRC for example.
Yeah, right.
Then they're going to contact the winery. They're going to let them know.
Yeah,
right?
Totally.
So then there's this dialogue.
And
so
actually, it's important for them because the winery also wants to be on top of what's going on for their brand.
Yeah.
So we're just like drinking this wine right now.
Yeah, so sorry.
Because it's delicious.
Meanwhile, our conversation, we have
quite a big jump in terms of style
texture, right?
Texture, yeah. This was a.
So this is 2006. This is, I don't know why that reminds me of Donald Trump. Just doesn't do that. Because I think as well, because I imagine him doing. Anyway, it's going somewhere really wrong.
All right.
Oh my god, I'm so glad no one is. Don't. Anyway, so Gérard Boulet, Mondain Sancerre, or Sancerre Mondain 2016, which Gwen
picked up.
Which is great.
I basically did like a CrossFit where I walked like a case of wine an hour across town. So that made me feel good about it.
Nothing else to do these Corona days.
8 kilometers with a case of wine on my back.
Oh,
it's good. Getting stronger by the day. Yeah, because they're sold. So I picked this one and the last one up at Passion Vin here in Berlin.
Okay. So yes, we have wine from Sancerre. So probably the most famous appellation within the Loire. And there's quite a lot of different appellations in the Loire. So Sancerre is always 100%. Actually, no, I was about to go in there with a bit of a weird fact. So if it's a white wine from Sancerre, it's always 100% Sauvignon. But there is red wine produced, which is made with Pinot Noir. And a little fun fact about this. So historically, Sancerre was a red wine appellation.
Oh, really?
I don't know if you got this in your homework. But not ringing any bells.
It's just to make me look like a news reporter.
Sorry, miss. Yeah. Historically it was a red wine appellation where it was Pinot Noir that was planted.
I did not know that.
And then after Phylloxera and the success of Bordeaux wines, Sauvignon was planted there. Because Sauvignon comes originally from Bordeaux, and because it, so there we go. And I mean, Cabernet Franc also down. I mean, Cabernet Sauvignon we know is like the two parents of Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc and Sauvignon Blanc.
The family.
So they're all kind of, and I don't know, I'm not sure what instigated Sauvignon being planted there, but it was planted there.
Interesting.
And now it kind of has taken over a lot of the vineyards. But there are some good producers still producing Pinot Noir today, but it is really like a minority. Of course, that people know when they say Sancerre that they think
white wine.
Sauvignon, yeah.
Right. Which is, popular. I would say like most average people probably know. But they like Sancerre. They may not know that it's Sauvignon, but they'll be like, oh, I've had that one and that one's delicious.
Yes. So Sancerre, beautiful, diverse soils. This is where we see different soil types. We have these sort of rockier soils. We see flint showing up as well. Obviously the limestone as well, some marl, and Gérard Boulet up there in the more sort of classic profile, like classic tasting profile wines. I would say there's sort of two producers that are really kind of iconic, and I would say Gérard Boulet and I'd say François Cotta as well. But yeah, so again, it's not a huge estate. It's 11 hectares, based around the town of Chavignon, which is also very famous for goat's cheese. And all
which
of the
pairs well with Sauvignon Blanc.
They say the chalkiness from the soil goes with the chalkiness of the cheese. I don't know, but it does work.
What's that bloody expression? It's like chalk and cheese.
Maybe that's where it came from.
I don't know.
Like chalk, cheese and wine.
Chalk, cheese and wine.
Yeah. But yeah, all the vineyards are quite old. They're starting from about 45 years of age. So it's got older vines. I know there's no herbicides, fungicides, pesticides used. And I think lower levels of sulfur. The yields in general are about a quarter lower than any other producer in the Loire as well. So he's really focused on quality over quantity and making these really beautiful expressions of the grape.
Yeah, this is really delicious.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? This is also what's interesting for me, which I think there's not enough conversation around, because it had been so hyped and so such a vibe to be saying Sauvignon isn't cool, as we've talked about a lot with the Cuvert stuff, which I'm still not convinced by, but with Sauvignon it's slightly different. But that's just my taste.
Yeah, I also think because Sauvignon can be so many different, it can express itself so many different ways. I think that's I remember even just taking my first wine classes, and when you really are a noob and you know nothing, being like, I didn't know it was Sauvignon Blanc. And that explains probably why I liked it, because of course for starting out, the New Zealand Sauvignons are so delicious, you're kind of led that way, and then you get more interested, you're like, oh, the cooler climates have a totally different flavor profile.
Yes.
And it feels like a completely different product.
Yes.
So it's really interesting, and actually it's not just for suburban moms.
It's not. In this case it's really not, and I think this is a wine it's coming up to 5 years of age, so it is developing. It's still got some lovely youthful things, but the honey, the honey, rich, creamy notes are coming through. It
even has, maybe I used the wrong word, but it feels like that sort of petrol-y, I
know what you mean, yeah. I think that's this kind of flinty kind of.
Yeah, it might be, because I was like, maybe it's the wrong word for it, but
this kind of struck. Yeah, flinty.
Yeah.
And then it also gives this kind of a slightly different floral profile as well, because it's not going into that elderflower bond that you see sometimes. It's almost like going more into white flowers, let's say.
Totally. He doesn't have so many outfits, so.
He's always wearing the same outfit, is that what you mean?
Yeah, he's
still wearing the same outfit. I thought you guys just coordinate actually, because I saw that you were both wearing the orange.
She basically only has orange scarves so that
Yeah.
it can be seen in the underbrush.
I see.
Because he's very camo otherwise, naturally. He's straight into Emily's.
Not fully convinced, but
All that
I
barking.
think I
maybe
don't
a
get
dry
to see
mouth.
you very much.
Yeah. So anyway, back to the wine.
What do you think of this? Food pairings, that's usually your question.
Yeah, I don't know. I actually think this is maybe more versatile than it. Like, I think I would drink this by itself happily. I think, I don't know, there's something, I kind of want
I want a creamy sauce and pastry, and it could be with chicken
Yeah.
or it could be with
fish. I was going to say like
Like
a
a
fish
fish
mornay,
pie.
like fish pie, yeah. Cod mornay, like this kind of like
Yeah.
cream sauce, butter.
Totally.
Because it can go, that's why I was like, I think it's actually pretty versatile.
Imagine a fish. I wish we had a
Even
fish
pasta
pie
would be
right now.
great with a creamy pasta.
Yes. Or even like a seafood risotto with
Totally.
lots of parmesan
Yeah.
on top.
So I think there's like enough fattiness going on that like
Oh Mia, that's good wine. The length on that
Yes.
is amazing.
really delicious.
I also think this
Oh,
style
not
of
cod
Sancerre,
mornay.
where it's more complex, it can handle more like richer foods
Yeah,
because
totally.
everybody, you know, you read these wine books about wine, food and wine pairing, and they're so sterile in some ways.
Yeah. It's always the same shit too. It's like Sauvignon,
Yes.
goat cheese.
Yes.
It's
Which-
like,
yeah.
I mean,
So, well, goat cheese, and I was thinking the whole like Sauvignon and asparagus.
yeah, right. Yeah, actually didn't even cross my mind.
I mean, especially here in Germany, we have like when Spargels like happens, when it's asparagus
The
season.
Dutch are also into this too.
6 months of overcooked asparagus. Someone else said that to me. They're like, why do they love asparagus so much? And then you just get like wet
Like a
asparagus.
floopy, wet noodle
It's
asparagus.
like, I can buy tinned asparagus all
Flaccid
year round.
asparagus.
Yeah.
Oh, tinned asparagus. That's like a throwback to the 80s. Like a, oh.
I thought you might be down with that. Wrapped in some ham.
I
With a
mean,
cheesy sauce over the top.
no. Fucking asparagus.
Mm.
A fish pie. That's like, yeah, I was thinking cod mornay, yeah.
Mm.
Same thing, mashed potato, cream sauce,
Yes.
fish.
Yeah. I mean, put the boat out, like have a lobster mornay maybe.
Yeah,
Some
it's
mashed
good.
potato. Yeah, comfort food in some ways. It'd be interesting just because of. Also, like, having something that's kind of like that, that's. Like a fish pie is kind of like a working class dish, right? And then to have something sophisticated like this.
I mean, it just made me laugh because
Boil in the bag cod.
because we had kind of one of these, like I talked about it the last episode, that we had a burgundy night a few weeks ago, and then it was this like, Lukey and I had instant ramen for dinner. I mean, he put sea urchin in his, so it was a bit of a fancy instant ramen. But then it was like instant ramen and a bottle of burgundy. Fuck it, pair it with whatever you want. Like, have a fancy bottle, have a working class meal. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Sometimes they go well. Because we forget that people, like, the wine is also rustic, you know?
Mm.
People drink it, the people from there drink it with their everyday meals. I don't think it's so far removed to think, like, some fish and potatoes.
No, it'd be amazing.
It's so good. Best of all the
I've been
worlds.
eating quite a lot of, whenever I cook like potatoes, if I bake them or whatever, like little ones, you know, so they're like almost like buttery, like, but not just buttery because they've been cooked in butter, but like the texture of the inside's
I
buttery.
guess it depends on the, yeah, the...
And you know, they're like left over the next day.
Mm.
I like reheat them up and then I put them in bread and I eat them like that. Carbs on carbs. It's like the best thing ever.
It's like I brought her a Danish a couple of weeks ago that was like...
Oh my god, that was it. I told you this already, right?
From
When you gave me the
Albatross.
Danish and I was like, carbs on carbs.
It was like
So good.
potato gratin inside a Danish.
Yeah, carbs on carbs is only better if there's dairy and carbs on carbs.
This is like cheese and potato inside a Danish.
Yes.
So shout out to Albatross Bakery here in Berlin because they make some of the good shit.
Yeah, maybe we should do a...
I mean, we're fueled on it right now. We ate from there today, so they make amazing stuff. All right, we're like
Next one, I know.
just gabbing away.
We're back. I was a bit out of sorts when we recorded last time. I was like really out of practice with being in front of the camera.
But now the
Social-
drinking is
socialising.
socializing. I know, it's like people, every time I've seen people, I've had to like apologize for my awkwardness because I feel like I'm not quite there yet, back up to practicing.
I just
people.
want to say as well, I feel the same way. And number two, that wine that we just had
So
is
good.
spectacular. Like, because the chalkiness is starting to come through in that wine at the end. Like, you can really taste the
It
soil.
lasts forever.
Mamma mia.
Really good.
Buonissimo. So, number 3, we're on 2018, Richard Leroy, La Noël
Holy
de Montbénaud. Is that how you say it? Montbénaud?
Yeah, Montbénaud.
Mm. So, bit of an icon, this wine. Very small producer, Richard Leroy. 2.7 hectares, so it's almost microscopic actually in terms of production. Bit of a character. I don't know why I was about to say bit of a vagabond. I think I just wanted to use that word, but
Someone just imagine like with a jaunty with a
I know,
stick
bit of a
and a red kerchief.
and I was
on
like,
the end.
I wanted to say it, and, I was like, and then I literally said to myself, that's not an appropriate word. Anyway, so yeah, a bit of a character, and I think a guy that really is sort of seeking, I wouldn't say seeking perfection, but seeking the
Authenticity.
truest expression,
Yeah.
yes, authenticity in what he's doing, and somebody that's willing to do all the experiments to really find where that is. And I know you were saying when you were reading up about him about, you know, how his approach to barrels and his kind of very rigorous experimentation to find exactly the formula that works for him. And
Yeah,
his
because I
wines.
read that he called himself a tasting freak who can taste exactly the wood used in wines. So it's like he obviously has a very developed palate and
Very finely tuned.
yeah, finely tuned, sensitive. So yeah, this I love that. Like so far, every wine that we've tried, like the scent on this is completely different to the other two scents. This is really like powerful.
So for our listeners that don't know these wines, it's a 100% Chenin Blanc, and yeah, for people who kind of know the winery or sort of in the natural wine world, kind of know that these wines have like a cult status because the quantity is so low. I mean, I got 3 bottles. The allocation was 3 bottles for this year. Still not quite sure why we didn't get more of that.
Woo.
But
Why?
Thank you.
Pucker.
But yeah, so one of them has been used for today for the podcast.
Wow.
But yeah, for me this is a very true expression of Chenin Blanc. So Chenin always has this very racy acidity. We've talked about Chenin quite a bit on the podcast. But there's nervousness, but then also the width, right? The breadth and the intense.
That's why it makes it
character.
such an interesting grape, because it can be this like super acidic, like unapproachable kind of bland, weird wine, and then on the other side of the spectrum be this big, honey, like rich kind of stuff going on. So it's like a.
And I mean, this one's 14% alcohol as well.
This is a banger. This is a firecracker.
And this is amazing because it's 14%, but the acidity
It's
still
so
feels so high.
nice.
You don't even feel the heat from the alcohol.
For
It's shocking.
those North American listeners, like the I feel like the cheek taste is like Welch's grape juice, where you get this like, you know, Welch's grape juice is a grape juice that's like sold as being like the taste you can feel in your cheeks. So this gives me that same like,
Like this
pow, you
tanginess.
feel it like in your cheeks, like it really. Because I think the scent is much rounder and sort of honeyed, and then you take the sip and you're like, woo!
Yes.
It like catches you a little off guard. It's really
Beautiful.
fun. Yeah.
And I couldn't find the total production for this vintage, but the previous vintage, there were 400 bottles produced.
Oh wow.
So, you know, I don't feel so bad about my 3.
No, that's
or
actually
3
pretty
bottles.
good.
So it's like less than 2, I think it's less than 2 barrels. So, yeah, I thought,
Amazing.
yeah.
What I mean,
I love Chenin so
me
much.
too, because I know you also like South African wine a lot, and then there's some great versions of it there. But this, I'm trying to think like, I mean, I also would drink this by itself. Basically, everything we've had so far could be a standalone. Happily drink them just with friends. They actually don't need something else. But I don't know, this is a tricky one for food.
I think I could imagine you and I sitting here and just drinking a bottle of this and not thinking about it. But maybe for the everyday person, because the acidity is quite high, if you feel it a little bit.
So you need something like
Yeah.
give you some
Cushioning.
Yeah.
Cushioning. Yeah,
So
well,
maybe, yeah.
do you know what I think? I was going a bit of in another direction. fondue. Because
Mm.
if something's cut through something fatty
Interesting.
and creaminess, not for you. What would you have with fondue? We should do a little fondue
Yeah, we
episode
should
where
do
we got
actually. Because
I have
like
a fondue
fondue.
set at home as well.
It's tough with fondue.
Apri. Maybe we'll do that when we do our Swiss wines. And
Yeah, we do a.
we've got one coming up.
Mm-hmm. I
And
like
proceed.
fondue a lot. Yeah, but I can see. I mean, I guess I'm always like tough with eating with fondue and drinking anything too
You
cold,
have to.
anything.
You have to drink
yeah.
acidic wine.
But they tell
You
you
drink
yeah,
water
right.
and you get the cheese ball.
But isn't that funny? Because there's so much Swiss wine, so like a lot of it has very low alcohol, like Chasselas and stuff.
But I
Or
think
low,
the
low
acidity.
sorry.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Chasselas is quite like low.
It's true.
So curious. But I mean, I would eat cheese fondue and have cheese dreams
Like
anytime.
raclette then.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
What would you have with this? I
Yeah,
feel like
that's
you
what
went in
I'm
that
struggling.
direction. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm struggling a bit actually what I would eat with this. Because I definitely would need to eat something to put a base on it because the acidity is quite high. And as I'm getting older, acidity hits me harder. I have a harder time.
It's me in the pit of my
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah,
No,
that
this
stomach
isn't tough
line
for
has
me.
been worn away.
Yeah, basically.
It's wearing
It's just
thin
like-
guys, yeah.
It's like a used Kleenex just falling apart.
Yeah, but what about even things like, I don't know, a chestnut
chestnut.
soup, for example?
Ooh, that sounds good. Also the chestnutty, I can see that being delicious.
What about pizza? Not
Like a
bad.
Bianca pizza.
With potato and
Yeah.
rosemary.
Exactly.
Mm.
Yeah,
Carbs and
that
carbs.
sounds good. Carbs and carbs, yeah. Potato on bread. That sounds good.
Mm.
I think like I wouldn't put. I think with this particular, maybe like not with all Chenet, but this particular one, I think it could, because it's so like expressive on its own. Maybe it doesn't need anything so.
Maybe sushi.
Maybe, but that's why I like the potato thing because it's like
Yeah.
that potato with rosemary. That's like enough to. You can still taste this and let it have
Yes.
its own thing. Yeah, I'm gonna think on that.
It's lovely though, the more that this wine is open, you start to get different layers, right? So initially you get the acidity, you get this sort of trademark like bruised apple, appley, orchard fruit kind of tone to the wine. And then like again this kind of little bit of nuttiness as well. And it's just that nuttiness is now coming into like a touch of toastiness.
Maybe a tart. I don't know. I'm like.
Maybe it's just that albatross dauphinoise or whatever, that
Yeah.
potato gratin.
I just think
croissant.
I would put something simple with this actually. that's
breast
not
chicken,
too-
like a roasted
Yeah.
corn-fed chicken or something.
I just think when I think
with garlic aioli or something like.
that can stand up to it, but isn't like I kind of like think of simple stuff with this because I think it's so nice on its own. It doesn't need something powerful to like overshadow it.
There's a
Like
St.
the-
John recipe for poached chicken, which is quite delicious.
I'm getting hungry now.
Me too. I'd love
That
it.
sounds
I mean, it'd
wearing
be
off.
great if there was like a rotisserie chicken. Maybe that's it.
Right here.
That's it. A rotisserie
Rotisserie
chicken.
I mean, I'll eat a rotisserie chicken
With
any
your
day of the week.
fingers. No.
No.
There is a restaurant actually, not far from Aura. It just does chicken, but
Just the chicken. This was really delicious. I'm gonna think about that for the food. By myself later at home. I'll be like, So that was good. Lovely.
I think for people who are looking to try, Loire Valley Chenin, they could look at appellations like Vouvray, for example.
Right.
So there's still, you can find good value in Vouvray. Montlouis as well is an appellation that's slowly building up. There's a producer called Francois Chidane. I think you would have tried the wines. They're at Passing Van. Vouvray, Saumur as well.
Yes, I was looking
Yes.
for a little Saumur.
Yes, some very, very nice wines being produced there. And Savigny, obviously, which is also iconic.
Right.
It's got Nicolas Joly. I was actually toying around with maybe bringing that wine today, the Cuvée des Syrah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh. Was
We have
that
enough on our
was that
plates right
FOMO
now.
gaze?
I was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think after this, on a hungry belly right now, it's gonna be maybe it's good 4 or 5 might have been the
5 might have been the
might have been the
straw
might have been the tipping point. A little
Yes, yes.
bit. But this is really delicious. What would I mean? You're saying like these are small allocate, like there aren't a lot of bottles. So I'm guessing that retail wise, this is not something people are gonna be able to find retail?
I don't think it's that cheap, because I think if it was retail,
This is more something people should be looking for on wine lists.
yeah, you
let's
can
say.
find it on wine lists if you see it. You might find it in wine shops. So if
Yeah,
you find
you
it,
might.
you buy it.
Yes.
But, and then, I mean, listen as well. It's a wine that like there's no appellation. This is another example, Vin
Right.
de France, right? Like there's no appellation on this wine as well. But yeah, if you see it, I suggest you try it. Obviously, I mean, for us, like if we sell wines cheaper than other restaurants here. If we were to see this on another wine list, it'd be about 110, 120 euros. So we would sell this here at Aura maybe for 90 or something.
Yeah. I mean, I think good value for what you're getting. This is
Yeah.
really exceptional.
Yes.
It's big and bold. I like it.
But you know, 80 euros now, like 80 to 90 euros, like, which is where we'd sell it, it's like, pay that for a Chablis now.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like
Yeah.
kind of
It's in line.
right. It's delicious. I know it's one of those that I don't want to tip away because it feels like a waste.
Tip your water away and then put it in your water glass and you can drink it after.
Yeah. Maybe I'll take a sip of water too.
Hydrate, Harmon. That's what my friend Jan always says to me. He's like, hydrate, Harmon, because he watches me and I don't drink any water.
I know I'm also like becoming this person that like forces people to drink water at the house now.
Yeah. Why? Because you
I
get
see
to get
you.
a bit unruly. I see you getting
Not,
unruly in my
not
bed.
drinking water. No, it's more like you're
You'll
gonna
have to
feel
go
like
home and
shit
feel good
tomorrow.
the next day.
Yeah, it's like I also know this for myself. Like forcing myself, putting lots of bottles of water on the table means that someone is going to force you to drink more water, and it solves a lot of problems. People
Mhm.
forget that drinking water is like I've been a lifelong insomniac, and one of the major causes of insomnia is
Booze.
dehydration.
Oh. I was like, booze!
Dehydration.
I'm like, the answer to every question is booze.
Yeah, but actually, like that's the thing because it makes your heart race a little bit more, so you have a hard time
okay.
falling asleep. So, if you're an insomniac, the number one thing you can do for yourself is just drink more water, and then you can figure out the other shit.
And if you're hungover and not able to sleep, maybe you should drink some water.
Have some water.
Not booze. Booze is not the answer.
No. Hair of the dog
Water
only
is
works
the
for a little
answer.
amount of time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because if you apply that theory to a hangover, you could just be, I mean, you'd be like with Nail and I.
Yeah. You'd be covered in deep heat A535, and you'd be doused in lavender, and
Uncle Montague making moves on you in the evenings. You
love
have
that
too many
film so much.
sherries.
Do the shapes of these glasses of Fender palettes?
oh, I love that film so much.
Yeah.
Such a good film.
So we're on to wine 4. We've made it to the end almost.
This also is like, I mean,
Beautiful.
totally different smell. Like, and again on another. And you know what's really funny is actually like, consider this as a northern wine. There are some things that bring me somewhere else because of there's a little.
So for everyone tuning in, we're now drinking 2018 Samuel Champagny from Thierry Germain, which is, I was just saying to Gwen before we started recording today, actually, that this is a wine that I've listed on quite a lot of wine lists, and yeah, I'm quite fond of it because it's not crazy expensive.
It's really
it's
good
reasonable.
value. I think I paid 15 to 17 euros.
Yes.
It was less than 20.
Okay. Yeah.
Like I thought, wow, this is a really good value.
But typical,
So
it's
smooth.
100% Cabernet Franc, because Samuel Champagny is. And I love this, it's on the nose, you get this raspberry, violet, this perfume. Maybe it's the wine that smells of space, maybe. But then it's herbaceous, so it almost smells like the full raspberry bush with all the leaves and all the thorns and all the...
And a bit of jalapeno and some
Red,
paprika.
exactly,
and like,
totally. Exactly. Yeah, black currant, like this lovely bit of
Yes.
black fruit, but then also this, you're right, this kind of slightly vegetal note, earthiness,
Yeah.
like a touch of truffle.
Let's have these with the tamales.
This would be great with some Mexican tamales. Gwen's partner's been making a Mexican storm here in Berlin.
The Austrian making tamales.
Yes.
But I would actually, now I'm sad I didn't have a bottle of this when we had tamales at home because I think this would be amazing.
With the beans as well.
Yes,
I don't know why,
they're
but I'm
so
just like,
good,
oh,
yes.
just make the beans. Yeah.
Because I think there's something like very smooth about this. It's so like, live.
Crunchy. There's these tannins, but they're like,
But it's
they're
not.
fine, but they're kind of dusty at the same time.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like.
They're fine and dusty, but there's quite a few of them.
Yeah, also very easy drinking.
For me, when you taste this, it reminds me of like when you see these old black and white photographs where they don't have as many pixels in as like the current day ones.
Right.
So there's like,
A fuzz around the edge.
yeah, or just like, not even just on the edge, just like the whole thing. Like there's this kind
Softness.
of, yeah.
Like the Vaseline sort of like soft focus.
Yes. But like also kind of like a firmness too, because it's like, I don't know.
Dynasty.
Yeah. Maybe it's like James Dean, this wine.
I'm more like, is it like an 80s soap opera?
What's an 80s soap opera that you...
Dynasty.
I never watched it, okay.
Oh, it's really good.
Okay, that's why I missed that reference.
We
where I
were-
was just like, I bypassed that.
We were allowed to stay up till 9 p.m. on Fridays. Because it was on, I don't know what British channel it was on till 9, but it was good. But yeah, this is really very easy drinking. Like, it has tannins, but it's not like...
No, they just come through, but they come through in this kind of like
Gentle.
almost a lemony kind of way as well, where they're kind of acidic and fresh, crunchy. It's amazing, isn't it, with wine? Like, just, this is epic.
This little smokiness. I would drink this with goulash also.
I see what you mean, yeah, like a stew. Or a schnitzel or something.
Yeah, because it's like, no, I was thinking the goulash because of the sort of like, that like red pepper base. This has given me a little like paprika vibes.
Yeah,
Because there's a little tiny, like, not smokiness, but almost smokiness. Oh, I would smash this with some goulash.
I think you're
Similar
right.
vibes.
I mean, goulash is not something, I've eaten it like maybe once or twice in my whole life. But I think you're right,
I'm
like
thinking about
casserole or something.
Yeah, I'm thinking like
oxtail.
like that Austrian goulash, and you eat it with like the semmel bun after, or like eat all the sauce up, and it's all made with red pepper and beef, and it's kind of sweet,
It's
but
really
kind of
good.
savory.
Yeah.
And yum. This is really good. Also, I
Chili
love
con carne.
what. Yes, totally.
Chili
I actually
con
just
carne.
made an amazing chili last
When
week.
you had chili con carne, did your mum used to make it with rice as well?
Yeah, always. I mean, British.
I know, it's so
Yeah,
funny.
it's
Really
so
white
England.
rice as well.
Really white, like
But don't-
glowing white.
And like no one's added any salt to
No.
it. It's just like this sweet overcooked
I think
white
my
rice.
mom even serves it with like basmati rice
I think
for a
mine-
total mindfuck.
I
With
think
cheddar on
mine
top.
does, yes. And cheddar that's grated, but through the biggest holes possible.
Yes.
in the
Oh
grater.
yeah,
It's like
100%.
pieces.
Otherwise it crumbles. I'm a big cheddar fan. But I actually made
But there's
chili.
no microplane in
No.
the English kitchen.
No. It's what side of the four. I mean, I still have one of those. Lucas looks at it with disdain every time it comes out of the
But it's
cupboard.
always the big one, also on the big side, because you know.
Cheddar will crumble if you try to. We have a microplane at home. You do that, and you just end up with like 8 pieces of cheddar in your hand.
I think it's that, and then I think it's also like the housewife, the housefrau, the mama who's like at
I'm not
home.
cleaning that motherfucking tiny thing.
She's one. I mean, those really
Those
tiny ones are
holes.
horrible. You need like a toothbrush
Yes,
to get in there.
exactly.
So there's that, and then it's like, how can I grate this cheese as quick as I can just to get dinner over
big
with?
chunks.
Like I'm just. Yeah,
If they could, they would just crumble it with their bare hands and
yeah.
sprinkle it.
Yeah, they would. I mean, there was a stage where I didn't have a grater at home, so I just used to take a knife and just slice it really,
Yeah.
really off.
Like Italian style. With the parmesan.
Yes.
Understood chunks.
Flakes. Yeah,
Flakes.
they are. They're like, I don't even know what. Yeah, they're like thin
Yeah,
slices.
Thin slice, the Dutch like that too, the
Yeah.
cheese slicer. I have
Yeah.
a Dutch cheese slicer. But yeah, chili. I made some chili recently with the tomatoes from our balcony because we'd frozen them from last spring. So I made chili with the tomato base from my own balcony. We did, I made like a chipotle and black bean. Fucking delicious. God, I love chili, but now next time I know I'm gonna get a bottle of this.
Chili and Frankie.
So good.
Chili,
Chili and Frankie. Not Frankie and Grace. Frankie and
Bloody
Chili.
hell, that's a brilliant.
Such a good show.
Oh my god. There's
I'm
so.
really sad it's over.
There's. Is it finished? I thought there was another series coming.
I don't know, I hope so.
I think there'll be another series. I mean, Jane Fonda. Oh, it's
Both of
ridiculous.
them. Lily
I
Tomlin.
know, they're both amazing for different reasons, but you just look at Jane Fonda and you're like, how are you in your 80s? Like, she's like her, like everything. Just like, I mean, I know she's like Mrs. Aerobics or whatever,
Right.
but still. But
Such a good show.
and what I love about it is like, I don't know, I looked at the two of them.
It gave me hope, actually. That
No,
whole show gave me hope
actually,
about life in.
I mean,
as
it,
an ol- as I get
it
older.
needed to happen because everyone was like, oh, you get old, it's going to be like this. And it's like, actually, no, you don't. You're still
you
just
just-
like a human person.
You're still you. You
You
just
still have all the same wants and needs.
sometimes you might break a hip if you fall down.
I know,
So like,
I know, so
it's like
good.
you're still gonna be you. Like you'll still be you when you're 80,
Yeah.
and I'll be me. So it'll
Yes.
be, yeah, it's like I think it just gave me so much hope and humor to look at these like two phenomenal women.
And also to like acknowledge that they are still phenomenal. Like that
Yes.
was for me the most powerful part of it. And
I'm happy I got pushed into watching it because I probably wouldn't have
oh
chosen
my,
it.
I mean,
And then I binged it.
I've been,
And
I mean,
I cried
I've
when it was
rewatched.
over.
I know.
I was
I've watched it every time. I'm just like they're so amazing.
They're
They're
so
friends, and also like the
funny.
power of like female friendship.
Yes. I think it's like the whole thing about like, yeah, their families falling apart and them finding each other, even through conflict with each other.
Yes.
But it's like,
Yeah, I mean, it's like they're like so opposite and so different, and it's so tense, and you're just like, how are they making this work?
and at
But they
first
just
you're like,
they do it, don't
Right.
they? They just carry on.
and I feel like they're like the two perfect archetypes for women because I kind of see myself in both of them.
That's what I was literally
Yeah.
about to say. Like, so the first few episodes, I
Like
was
you
like,
want to be the fancy one, but then
well,
you're
I
like,
thought I was Grace, and then
Yeah.
now I'm more like, but I'm actually
Actually,
way more
I
like
know.
Frankie.
it's like the
I'm totally gonna be that person. It's like,
my yurt is
let's go and meditate. Yeah, let's go and meditate. And
I pitched a yurt in the back garden. It's so weird.
I know, and I
Such a
kind
good
of.
show.
I love her. Actually, Frankie is my favourite because I just think she's kind of.
She's such a wild card.
She is. She's kind of amazing, and she's just kind of like
I
she
love
just
it.
lets it flow.
Yeah, and I like that it's like challenging the other character who's lived her life, kind of being the what
Yeah.
she's supposed to a little bit. In
Yeah.
a different way. She was also a fierce woman, you're running a business, so it's
Yeah,
like
but she's kind of.
two mavericks.
She's very rigid in that
Yeah.
too, whereas like Frankie's the
But
one
they
that's
need
like
each other.
kind of loosens her up, but
Yeah.
then at the same time, like Grace is the one that's like, oh man, you're a bit of an idiot right now.
like they need each other so
Yeah.
much, they balance each other out. Such a good show.
It
And we
is.
digress.
We have digressed, so we should go back to the bar. So that's the different Frankie to the one that we're drinking. But yeah, I love this wine.
I'm like, I think it's been a really interesting lineup, these four, because I think like it already shows how insanely diverse the Loire is. That there are so many things for you to look to, like that you could spend probably months just buying from this region and still not explore everything.
Yeah, and I mean we've just scratched the surface. We haven't gone into any kind of technical info about the wines or the wineries so much, but
You can Google that.
you
Sorry.
as you can see, Gwen's a big supporter of homework. She came with 8 pages for this.
That
None
I
of
hope,
which she
and I
used.
hope would
Yeah.
absorb through osmosis, that didn't.
No, but I think the most important thing is to get out there and get tasting because then you can discover what part that you like and what wine, like what wineries you like, what wines you like, what grape varieties you like.
Totally. And that like, and actually, say for example, if you just realize right now that Sancerre is Sauvignon, that gives you an opportunity to explore other regions with Sauvignon. That like, sometimes it's fun to see where the grape that you enjoy in one region can take you in other places, because each of these grapes in different places will have a completely new expression.
Mm.
And then it's nice to like explore a little bit, yeah, where else it's gone, and the history, why things ended up places. Because as we know, Chardonnay also grows a lot in South Africa, and
Yes.
wherever else. So there's like also the history of people and how those grapes ended up there that you can also learn about, which is sometimes even more interesting than just the grape.
I concur. So
Before we get too wild,
we're going to carry on drinking.
yes.
And thanks for tuning in again. We'll be back in 3 weeks. And until then, if you're not following us on social media, you can find us on
Twitter at juice_podcast.
and on Instagram at juice.podcast.
And otherwise, you can find Emily at Vina Lupa.
And Gwen at Gwen Douglas, and that's Gwen with a U, not with a W.
Gwen Douglas, you can find me everywhere.
And it's just one word. There's no additions to that because of lots of
2000.
people keep copying Gwen's account and adding different words on. So just be aware that the one that I'm following. So if you follow Vina Lupa, the one that I'm following is Gwen's profile
Perfect.
if you're unsure.
I wish we had like a whole camera for Ludwig under the table because he's adorable. I took a photo of him for you later.
That's non-native English. Too many years.
Too many years.
I take a photo for you under the table.
This is 12 years of ESL.
Yeah.
So until next time, I'm Gwen Douglas.
And I'm Emily Harmon. Thanks for tuning in.
Cheers. Cheers.